Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the show where you're watching the Fox Business Network. Let's get right at it with House Republican Guy Reschenthaler. He sits on House Judiciary. Congressman, Democrat Senators Chuck Schumer and Ron Wyden, should they be called out for putting political pressure on the FBI, saying FBI do not investigate the Hunter Biden case? They did that before the election. They sent a letter to Christopher Wray, FBI director, saying don't do it when there already was an active federal criminal investigation going on. Did they meddle here?
Well, Liz, of course they meddled. And first off, thanks for having me on. And as always, please call me Guy. But Liz, let's say the roles were reversed. And these were Republicans telling the DOJ to sit on a story regarding a Republican presidential candidate's family. The media would be going berserk. The fact that there's a double standard here is so apparent, and the hypocrisy is incredibly rich. And Liz, I asked for a special counsel to be appointed specifically to investigate Hunter Biden, what he was doing regarding China, regarding Ukraine, the Russian oligarchs he was dealing with. The American people need to know this. Unfortunately, they were not told about it in full before the election, but they should have the right now to know through a special counsel investigation.
Yeah, did any of the 50 former intelligence officials, they co-signed a letter saying this is Russian disinformation before the election, did any of them know that Hunter Biden was already under criminal investigation, federal criminal investigation? Because, and did the congressional Democrats know all of that, too, as they were accusing Mr. Trump of all sorts of things? We're talking in the Biden case, potential tax evasion, money laundering, maybe fraud. And again, you're calling for a special counsel to be appointed. What do you say?
Well, as far as those 50 so-called experts, they should now apologize because they went off without doing their due diligence and made these assertions that were completely false. Hunter Biden was being investigated back in 2018. There was an ongoing investigation, and yet they said this was Russian disinformation. That is a blatant falsehood, and they at least deserve to apologize now. Also, we need to hold the mainstream media to account because they completely covered this story up. They censored the New York Post article, and big tech oligarchs censored this story. They shut down my Twitter and my Facebook ability to share a story that was posted by the New York Post. So again, the mainstream media, where were they at the beginning of this story? And why was it that the big tech oligarchs were able to shut down and censor this story?
Yeah, we've got Senators Ron Johnson and Chuck Grassley they had a Senate report back in September about Hunter Biden. They said this is a national security problem. They said it raises criminal, financial, counterintelligence, and extortion concerns because Hunter and the Bidens were working on business dealings with China, Russia, other U.S. adversaries that undercut America's interests overseas. We're talking also Burisma, China, and we're also talking the First Lady of Moscow, Russian, Ukrainian, Kazakhstan oligarchs. The special counsel also, do we need a special counsel to probe James Biden's business dealings with the bankrupt hospital company, AmeriCorps? A lawsuit says Joe Biden's brother, James Biden, invoked his powerful brother's name to convince AmeriCorps to get a bridge loan from a hedge fund after James Biden reportedly promised he could get the hospital Middle Eastern investors because of the family name. Then he got a personal loan from the hospital company. What do you think about that angle?
Well, it's very clear that the Biden family has made money for years off the Biden name. But we definitely need a special counsel, particularly to hone in on Hunter Biden. I'm obviously upset about the entire family, but I'm very disturbed that Hunter Biden took Air Force Two to China and came back with $1.5 billion in a hedge fund. That is very problematic. And the fact that China is now a near-peer competitor to the United States, clearly our biggest adversary on the world stage, it's very important for the American people and the public and others in government to know whether Hunter Biden and Joe Biden are now compromised by the Chinese Communist Party. Yeah. And that's not to mention, like you mentioned, Liz, the issues with the Russian oligarchs in Ukraine as well.
Should Joe Biden answer questions whether he knew about his son's criminal probe and why he was letting his family members make money off his name? Because Hunter Biden's former business partner, as we've reported, Tony Bobulinski, says the vice president was in line for cash from a Hunter Biden business deal with China. Let's watch Joe Biden blast the reporters' questions about Hunter Biden right before the election. Watch Joe Biden here.
I know you'd ask it. I have no response. It's another smear campaign. It's right up your alley. They're the questions you always ask.
You see the bullying and the shutdown of reporters asking questions when that Senate report shows Hunter Biden went on hundreds of trips overseas using Secret Service protection. And you point out that, he went with his father when Joe Biden was vice president on an Air Force 2 to China. What do you say?
Well, first of all, what you saw from Joe Biden was him bullying the press, and the press there was actually doing their job, asking questions of Joe Biden. But think about it. President Trump was impeached for something that Joe Biden did. The quid pro quo never was between Trump and Ukraine. The quid pro quo was between Hunter Biden and getting that Ukraine prosecutor fired, Joe Biden firing the Ukraine prosecutor, rather. Also, there's clearly issues that may come up with quid pro quo issues vis-a-vis China, Russia, and elsewhere. That's why we need that special counsel. And it's time for the mainstream media to now do the job that they neglected to do during the 2020 campaign and dig into this story, ask questions. And it's time for big tech to stop the censorship of this story, which the New York Post was brave enough to run back in October.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Americans deserve a fresh look at this and airing about how we don't know if foreign policy was affected in any way. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was. That Senate report is based on. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Liz, we know it was impacted because you had a Ukrainian prosecutor that got fired that was investigating Burisma when Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma. So we have at least one instance.
Yeah, I understand that. We hear that, but there's that story because that prosecutor was accused of corruption. I hear what you're saying. That and what happened with China. I don't know. People are saying there should be a fresh look at this because we're seeing Treasury Department suspicious activity reports, millions of dollars coming out of China through shell companies toward the Bidens. To fund things like global shopping sprees for James Biden and his wife, and China is working with Russia on energy deals, and Hunter Biden was involved in that too, with, about a stake from CEFC to buy a stake in Rosneft. It's a lot of angles here. Congressman, final word. Where is this headed?
Well, I was just going to say, Liz, I really think that we're just at the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this story. And if we have a special investigator, special prosecutor appointed that actually does a thorough investigation that's independent of an incoming possible Biden administration, I think there's going to be a lot more here than what we're just hearing now. I think this story runs deeper than we can even imagine right now.
Well, they would have to move fast to get one appointed. We'll have to see. Thank you, Congressman. It's good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.